Imagine knowing that one wrong decision could cost you your life. Not because of wild animals, not because of poisonous snakes, but because of other human beings. In November 2018, a 26-year-old American named Allen Chau made a decision that shocked the world. He secretly hired local fishermen, paid them to break Indian law, and sailed toward one of the most forbidden places on Earth. His goal wasn't treasure, it wasn't fame, it wasn't survival. He wanted to meet a tribe that had rejected the modern world for thousands of years. A tribe that had made one thing painfully clear. Anyone who enters their island is not welcome. John knew the risks. He had read the warnings. He knew that outsiders had been attacked before, but he believed this time would be different. He stepped onto the beach. He called out to the people hiding among the trees, and within moments, arrows began flying toward him. That would be the last time anyone from the outside world saw Allen Chau alive. His body was never recovered. The island simply swallowed another visitor. But that raises a far more disturbing question. What kind of place is so dangerous that an entire government has made it illegal to visit? To understand why John never came back, we first have to travel thousands of years into the past. Hidden deep inside the Bay of Bengal, around 200 kilometers from mainland India, lies a tiny island almost completely covered in thick rainforest. From space it looks like paradise. Golden beaches, crystal clear water, dense tropical forests. If you didn't know its history, you'd probably dream of spending a vacation there. But this isn't paradise. This is North Sentinel Island, a place surrounded by a 5-kilometer exclusion zone enforced by the Indian government. No tourists, no researchers, no fishermen, no journalists. Nobody is allowed to land there, not because of military secrets, not because of dangerous chemicals, but because of the people who live there, the Sentinelese, perhaps the last truly isolated tribe on Earth. Nobody knows exactly how many Sentinelese live on the island. Some experts estimate around 50 people. Others believe there may be as many as 150. Nobody knows their real language. Nobody knows what they call themselves. Nobody knows what stories they tell their children. Nobody even knows how they see the outside world. Think about that. In a time when satellites can zoom into your backyard, when billions of people carry smartphones, there is still a community about whom humanity knows almost nothing. It's as if time stopped thousands of years ago. And perhaps that's exactly how the Sentinelese want it. Scientists believe their ancestors may have lived on the island for tens of thousands of years, long before the pyramids, long before the Roman Empire, long before written history. Generation after generation, they survived without cities, without electricity, without modern medicine, without the internet, without contact with civilization. While the rest of humanity built skyscrapers, crossed oceans, and reached the moon, the Sentinelese chose a completely different path. Isolation. And they've defended that choice with extraordinary determination. The outside world has tried many times to make contact. Almost every attempt ended the same way, with arrows. One of the earliest recorded encounters happened during British colonial rule in the late 1800s. British officer Maurice Vidal Portman landed on the island hoping to study its inhabitants. Instead, most of the tribe disappeared into the forest before he arrived. Unable to find them, Portman captured an elderly couple and several children, taking them away from the island. It ended in tragedy. The elderly couple soon became sick and died after exposure to diseases their immune systems had never encountered. The children were eventually returned. Many historians believe this terrible incident became one of the reasons the Sentinelese learned to fear outsiders. To them, visitors didn't bring friendship. Visitors brought death. For decades afterward, almost nobody dared return. Then, in 1974, another expedition arrived. This time, it wasn't soldiers. It wasn't explorers. It was a documentary crew hoping to film one of the world's most mysterious tribes. The cameras rolled. The crew approached carefully. They even brought gifts, coconuts, cooking pots, useful tools. For a brief moment, everything seemed calm. Then, without warning, an arrow shot out from the jungle. It struck the documentary's director in the leg. Fortunately, he survived, but the message couldn't have been clearer. The Sentinelese didn't care about cameras. They didn't care about documentaries, and they certainly didn't want visitors. The crew abandoned the mission immediately. Even today, that footage remains one of the rarest glimpses the world has ever seen of the Sentinelese. Yet instead of answering questions, it created even more. Years later, India made another attempt, this time led by one of the country's most respected anthropologists, Pandit. Unlike earlier expeditions, Pandit understood that forcing contact would only make things worse. So his team adopted a completely different strategy. Instead of landing aggressively, they stayed offshore. They floated gifts toward the beach, mostly coconuts, something the Sentinelese valued. Because coconut trees didn't naturally grow everywhere on the island. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, figures emerged from the trees, men carrying bows, women watching from behind, children peeking through the forest. The gifts were collected, sometimes without violence, sometimes with arrows fired into the air as a warning. Each visit revealed tiny pieces of information, but never enough to truly understand the tribe. Pandit later admitted something remarkable. The more he learned, the more he realized they should simply be left alone, because perhaps the greatest act of respect wasn't making contact. It was choosing not to. But then, nature itself tested the Sentinelese in a way nobody expected. On December 26, 2004, one of the deadliest tsunamis in recorded history struck the Indian Ocean. Entire cities disappeared. More than 200,000 people lost their lives. Governments feared the tiny Sentinelese population had been completely wiped out. Helicopters were sent to check whether anyone had survived. What happened next shocked everyone. As the helicopter circled above North Sentinel Island, everyone expected the worst. After all, the tsunami had devastated entire coastlines across the Indian Ocean. If modern cities couldn't survive those massive waves, how could a tiny tribe with no modern technology possibly stand a chance? The helicopter flew lower. The crew searched desperately for any sign of life. Then, movement. A man stepped out from the dense forest. He looked healthy, strong, completely unharmed. For a brief second, it seemed like a miracle. But then he reached for something, not to wave, not to ask for help. He raised his bow, pulled back an arrow, and fired directly at the helicopter. The pilots immediately climbed away. The message couldn't have been clearer. We survived. And we still want you to stay away. To this day, nobody knows exactly how the Sentinelese escaped the tsunami. Some researchers believe generations of living close to nature allowed them to recognize unusual signs, like the sea suddenly pulling back or animals behaving strangely, and moved to higher ground before the waves struck. Whether that's true or not, one thing became certain. The Sentinelese had survived one of the greatest natural disasters in modern history. But only 2 years later, another tragedy unfolded. In 2006, 2 Indian fishermen were fishing illegally near North Sentinel Island. Late at night, their boat's anchor came loose. As they slept, ocean currents slowly carried the boat toward the forbidden island. When morning came, they were no longer alone. The Sentinelese had found them. Neither fisherman survived. When Indian authorities later sent helicopters hoping to recover their bodies, the tribe gathered once again along the shoreline, bows drawn, arrows ready. Some arrows even struck close to the aircraft. The pilots had no choice but to retreat. The bodies were never recovered. It was another reminder that North Sentinel Island wasn't simply isolated. It was actively protected by the people who lived there. And yet, despite all these warnings, one man believed he could succeed where everyone else had failed. His name was John Allen Chau, a young American missionary. Unlike the fisherman, John's journey wasn't an accident. He planned it carefully. He studied the island. He knew about the arrows. He knew about the deaths. He knew Indian law strictly prohibited anyone from visiting North Sentinel Island. Still, he believed he had a mission. In November 2018, Chau secretly hired local fishermen to take him near the island under the cover of darkness. According to later investigations, he even carried gifts hoping to build trust. His first approach ended badly. As soon as he came near the beach, Sentinelese warriors appeared with bows. John tried speaking to them. He even sang songs and attempted friendly gestures. The response was immediate. Arrows flew toward him. One reportedly struck the Bible he was carrying. Most people would have left forever. John didn't. That night he wrote in his journal. He admitted he was scared, but he also believed he had to return. The next morning, he stepped back onto the beach. This time, he never came back. From a distance, the fishermen who had brought him there later reported seeing Sentinelese, people dragging his body across the beach before disappearing into the forest. Whether every detail is accurate may never be confirmed, because nobody could retrieve his remains. Indian authorities refused to launch a recovery mission, not because they didn't care, but because entering the island would have placed countless other lives at risk, including the lives of the Sentinelese themselves. John Allen Chau's death reignited a global debate. Should humanity ever contact isolated tribes? Some argued that learning about the Sentinelese could unlock valuable knowledge about ancient human history. Others believed making contact would be deeply unethical. History offers countless examples where isolated tribes suffered catastrophic disease, outbreaks after first contact. Viruses as common as influenza or the common cold, harmless to many of us, could wipe out an entire isolated population with no natural immunity. In other words, the greatest danger to the Sentinelese might not be their arrows, it might be us. Today, the Indian government enforces one of the strictest protection zones in the world. Around North Sentinel Island,